football season. My name is Mike Browning. I'm the host of the College Football Road Trip at cfbroadtrip.com. We have a bit of a slow week this week. There's a couple games that are pretty decent, but I'll be honest, I struggled to find a decent slate of games to pick. But when you have weeks like that, you're able to kind of go outside of your normal area to try to find some games. So there's a couple interesting ones that we'll be talking through this week as well. In the meantime, I'm about a week away from heading to South Carolina for both the Missouri at South Carolina game as well as the Georgia Southern at Coastal Carolina game to finish up my trips for the year. So I'm really excited about being able to go back on the road in about a week. In the meantime, let's go ahead and jump into this week's picks. And we're going to start off with a Friday night game out of the Big Ten. We have Iowa traveling to UCLA. Iowa is a team that's coming off a huge win over Wisconsin. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I had picked Wisconsin. I wasn't necessarily surprised that Iowa won, but I was surprised they won as big as they did. On the flip side, you have UCLA, which struggled through most of the schedule, but they are now on a 2-game winning streak, although against Rutgers and Nebraska, which is not necessarily the top tier of the Big Ten. Iowa, I think, is just a slightly better team. They are coming off that big win over Wisconsin to give them some momentum. It is a West Coast game on a Friday night, which might be a little tricky, but I think Iowa will have enough to win. I have Iowa winning on the road at UCLA on Friday night. Moving on to our Saturday matchups, we're going to start off with a game out of the Sun Belt. We have Arkansas State traveling to Louisiana. This is a game that's likely going to decide who's going to win the Sun Belt West Division. You have Louisiana, which is 4-0, and Arkansas State, which is 3-1. If Louisiana wins, they basically have it wrapped up. If they lose, Arkansas State wins, there'll be a tie, but Arkansas State will have the tiebreaker in that case. Arkansas State is coming off 2 straight wins, although it's against Southern Miss and Troy, which are the lower 2 teams of that division. Louisiana only has 1 loss of the year. That's an early season loss to Tulane, and that was only by 8 points. So I think Louisiana is just a better team all around. That will lead to a win this week. I have Louisiana winning at home over Arkansas State in Sun Belt play. Let's move on to an interesting ACC matchup. We have Duke traveling to NC State. Both of these teams are probably in the middle of the ACC somewhere, both with 2-3 records. Duke is coming off 2 straight losses, but those 2 losses are to a very good SMU team by 1 point, and then to a very good Miami team. NC State struggled through the past part of the year, but they are coming with 2 straight wins against Cal and Stanford. I still think NC State is the better team of these 2. It's going to be a close game. It's going to go to the 4th quarter. I think NC State will find a way to pull it out. NC State wins at home over Duke. Next, we have out of the Big 12, we have West Virginia traveling to Cincinnati. Both of these teams are 3-2 in Big 12 play, so they're likely both out of the Big 12 championship discussion, but they're still trying to get a good record to be able to go to a bowl later this year, especially West Virginia, which still needs 2 wins to be able to get there. If you look at West Virginia's record, they have 4 losses, but the 4 losses are to Penn State, Pitt, Iowa State, and K-State, which are all very good teams. So I think their record is pretty deceiving. On the flip side, you have a Cincinnati team, which is coming off a loss to Colorado last week. Although they have a slightly better record, their strength of schedule just wasn't the same as West Virginia. West Virginia's schedule, when I saw it this week, really impressed me in the fact that their 4 losses were all to really good teams. I think they will be able to go to Cincinnati and pull off the win this week. West Virginia wins on the road at Cincinnati in Big 12 play. Moving next to the SEC, we have South Carolina traveling to Vanderbilt. Both of these teams have 3 losses on the season, but they're both coming off some pretty big wins so far this year. That's why this is a very intriguing matchup to me. On one side, you have South Carolina. Their last 3 games, 2-point loss to Alabama, a big win over Oklahoma, and then an upset win over Texas A&M, giving A&M their first conference loss. And then we all know about Vanderbilt and how they beat Alabama, but their 2 losses in conference play are by 3 to Missouri and by 3 to Texas. So Vanderbilt's a very good team as well. I think South Carolina, with their 2 big wins over the past couple of weeks, has more momentum on this side. This is going to be one that goes to the second half. Wouldn't surprise me to see Vanderbilt win, but I just think South Carolina has a little more going for them. I have South Carolina winning on the road at Vanderbilt. Let's move on to the ACC. We have 23rd ranked Clemson traveling to Virginia Tech. Clemson is coming off a huge loss to Louisville last week. I said that I thought Clemson was the cream of the ACC, even with their early season loss to Georgia. They've absolutely proved me wrong last week by losing to Louisville, and losing pretty convincingly to them. On the flip side, you have a Virginia Tech team. They have 4 losses on the year, but if you look at their losses, all 4 losses are by 7 points or less, so they are still a very good team. Clemson still has a little bit more to play for. If the cards felt right, they could still find a way to backdoor in the ACC championship game, but not if they have a second conference loss. I think they're going to want to fight back this week, and I think that they will. I have 23rd ranked Clemson winning on the road at Virginia Tech. Moving to the Big 12 now, we have 20th ranked Colorado traveling to Texas Tech. Colorado's 4-1 in conference play. The only loss is to a K-State team that they were in that game with until late in the second half. Texas Tech is the team that's a coin flip. You don't know if you're going to get the team that only beat Abilene Christian by 1 point in the first week of the year, or the team that goes on the road and gives Iowa State their first loss of the season last week. So that's where this is going to come up. What Texas Tech team is going to show up? I think Texas Tech might be a little bit too full of themselves after the win last week, and they might come back down to earth. Colorado has looked really good this year. The games that they've won those games pretty convincingly. Because of that, I think they have a better shot in this one, even though they're the road team. I have Colorado winning on the road at Texas Tech. Next, let's move on to the Big Ten. We have Michigan traveling to number 8, Indiana. I think most people agree that Indiana is the surprise team of this year, still being undefeated this far into the season, being number 8 and being in position to make it to the playoffs. Michigan is a team that I don't think anybody thought would be nearly as good as they were last year, but I don't think they thought they would struggle as much as they are. Michigan is going to be struggling again. Three of their 4 losses were by 10 points or more, so it's not like they were even close in most of these matchups. On the flip side, if you look at Indiana, excuse me, all of their wins, even though it's against a pretty weak schedule, has been by at least 14 points or more. Even good teams usually struggle against one team and only win by single digits if they're undefeated. That tells me Indiana's for real, that they really haven't struggled yet. I think they're going to be able to put Michigan away in the second half, just like they have the other teams this year. I have Indiana winning at home over Michigan in Big Ten play. Now moving to the first of our 2 ranked versus ranked matchups. Both of them out of the SEC this week. We have number 11, Alabama, traveling to number 15, LSU. Alabama is obviously struggling. They did come off a huge win over Missouri last week, 34-0. But the 3 weeks before that were the loss to Vanderbilt, a 2-point win over South Carolina, and a loss to Tennessee. I do think that last week's game, a shutout against Missouri, was a get-right game for them to try to get in a good position. On the flip side, you have LSU, which is coming off their loss to A&M a couple weeks ago. The second loss was their loss to USC in week 1. So both of the losses were to ranked teams. They are still a very good team. I think last week's game against Missouri for Alabama was as a get-right game, and they will show something against LSU this week. But LSU is playing at home. There are only 2 losses with the ranked teams. It's going to go into the fourth quarter. I think LSU will do just enough to win in the end. I have LSU winning at home over Alabama. And then our big game of the week, again out of the SEC as well, number 3 Georgia traveling to number 16 Ole Miss. Georgia is coming off a closer than expected win over Florida. They were able to pull away a little bit in the fourth quarter to win by 2 scores. They are coming off the huge win against Texas a couple weeks ago. On the flip side, you have an Ole Miss team has struggled a little bit in the middle of their schedule, but is coming off a huge win against Arkansas last week in which they scored 63 points. So the question is the Ole Miss offense back to where they should be? Will they be able to put up that kind of offense against Georgia? Even if it's not by, a full 60 points, can they score against Georgia? Georgia's defense is a pretty stout defense when they need to be. They usually show up for the big games like this against Ole Miss. So I think that Georgia is going to be able to show up again this week, and I think they will be able to pull off the win. I have Georgia winning on the road at Ole Miss. So those are our games for this week. Again, we will be traveling to South Carolina next week, so I'm excited for that. In the meantime, go enjoy the Week 11 games, everyone. We'll talk to all of you again next week.